Hello, Internet. This week, the Leafs hit their biggest slump of the season, losing 2 out of 3 games, which makes their record for the month of November 3-3. Yeah. Let's see, how can I get them to keep watching? Hey, I know! Who wants candy? Welcome to the penalty box! Starting the week off on a sour note, the Leafs found out on Monday that their so-called first-line center has done it again. Tim Connolly has injured himself at practice and will be out for the next 10 days at least. Ron Wilson called it an upper body injury that apparently had nothing to do with his first injury this season. Okay, see, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Tim Connolly has played 6 out of the Leafs' 17 games so far this season. So in other words, due to 2 separate injuries in the first month of NHL action, Tim Connolly has been forced to miss almost 2/3 of the game so far. And it's not like this is new to him either. These kinds of injuries have plagued him over his entire career. Remind me again why we signed him? Alright, getting into the action. First up, the Leafs lose their most painful game of the week, 5-1 against the Florida Panthers. Scoring for Florida, Jack Skilly, Marco Sturm, Thomas Kopecky, and Sean Matthias. And for the Leafs, Phil Kessel with his 11th of the season, 3 minutes into the third, after the Leafs were down by 4 and the game was pretty much out of reach. My thoughts on this game? Goaltending. The Leafs have reached the point of the season where their goaltending has become their Achilles heel. Because even though the Leafs lost, they outshot the Florida Panthers 39-28. And this is against Jose 3 or more. Jonas Gustafsson started the game facing 21 shots, stopping 18 of them for a save percentage of .857. But after letting in 2 consecutive shots just over halfway into the game to go down 3-0, the Leafs bring in Ben Scrivens. And he actually does worse! He faces 7 shots, stopping only 5 to complete the debacle 5-1. And this confirms something about Gustafsson that I've thought for a while now. When Gus is on, he's good. I mean, he can be magnificent. But it's incredibly easy to get under his skin. And it just takes that one goal and bam. You've got to him, and he ain't winning that game. Moving quickly on, the Leafs win their only game of the week against the St. Louis Blues 3-2 in the shootout. Scoring for the Leafs were John Michael Lyles and Phil Kessel, both in the first and both on the power play. While the Blues replied with Jason Arnott in the second and Patrick Berglund to tie it in the third. Phil Kessel will be the only one to score in the shootout with a nifty speedy deke to put the game away. And what a turnaround game this was for Ben Scrivens. After the disintegration in Florida, although to be fair that wasn't really his fault, he comes back with a big performance here to steal the game, even though the Leafs were outshot by a margin of almost 2-1. He faces 40 shots in this one, stopping 38, while the Leafs only mustered 22 in reply. This includes the OT period, where he didn't really stand tall, but he stopped the 2 shots the Blues fired off, while Toronto got a whopping 0 in reply. Yep, solid effort, boys, solid effort. Scrivens is a solid goalie, but he can also be hit or miss. I mean, big game against Columbus, then losing horribly against Boston. Big win against St. Louis? Well, Leafs close out the week with a loss 5-2 against their cross-province rivals, the Ottawa Senators. Scoring for the Sens, Sergei Gonchar, Nick Foligno with 2, Zach Smith, and Milan McCulloch. And for the Leafs, Tyler Bozak, who actually got the only goal in the first period to give the Leafs the lead, and Joffrey Lupul to bring it within 1 late in the third. And this game actually needs a recap to give you the full story. The game started off well for the Leafs as they managed to take the early lead off a Tyler Bozak goal, his first of the season. But, as the Leafs themselves explained in their post-game interviews, they got away from their game in the second and the third. Meaning they got back on their heels, stopped using their speed, stopped getting pucks in deep, and making dumb mistakes in the neutral zone. The Sens pounced on that and turned things around, giving them the 3-1 lead late in the third. That's when Joffrey Lupul will get his goal off of a scramble in front of Craig Anderson to bring the game within 1. Then, with a minute remaining, Ron Wilson pulls Ben Scrivens, and Nick Foligno would add an empty netter to make the game 4-2. So naturally, Ben Scrivens goes back in and... oh, wait, he's staying on the bench? Milan McCulloch adds another empty netter, and that's it. Leafs fall 5-2. Now, pulling the goalie with a whole minute remaining in a 1-goal game? Really? I know Ron Wilson looks like a genius if it works, but the pulling of Scrivens happened way earlier than it needed to. I mean, the Leafs have life and jump after the Joffrey Lupul goal. They're flying in Ottawa's end, but a usually innocent turnover to Nick Foligno makes a clearing attempt into a goal, and there go your chances. But then again, this game really shouldn't have come down to that, because there were a number of problems that Toronto had in this one, and most of them have been a problem for a few games now. We'll start things off with the most obvious, the power play. After a game in St. Louis where the Leafs went a respectable 2 for 4 on the power play, they got nothing going against Ottawa. They went 0 for 7 against Ottawa, including a couple of crucial chances to make it close early in the third. I mean, yeah, the Leafs haven't had good special teams in a number of years now, but how many times do you need to point it out before something changes? But now on to the bigger, chronic problems, lackadaisical play being the most frustrating. As I mentioned against St. Louis, the Leafs got 2 goals in the first to take the lead, and then took their foot off the gas. Their shots in the second and third really tell the tale there, as they were clearly caught back on their heels to allow the Blues to tie it. Of course, they managed to ride Scrivens and pull off the win in the shootout, but it shouldn't have gone that far. In Ottawa, same deal. Tyler Bozak gets the early goal and the Leafs stop playing. Then the Sens take a 2-goal lead and the Leafs find themselves in the third period down 3-1, playing a Craig Anderson who, ever since moving to the nation's capital, has really rejuvenated his career. Maybe Ponce de Leon should have moved his search for the Fountain of Youth a bit north? Show of hands who got that? No? Cool. The point is, if the Leafs had kept up their attack like they did in their early season success, this game would have been much different. Not saying they necessarily would have won, but their odds go way up. Another problem plaguing the Leafs lately, lack of speed. In fact, it's been plaguing them for a week and a half now, ever since their slump started. The Leafs, to start the season, were one of the league's faster teams. That's what they thrived on, that's what won them games early on. But now for some reason the team has really slowed down and are making stupid mental mistakes. The plain and simple thing is, Leafs need to stick to their identity and stick with what works. Speed wins you games, what you're doing now doesn't. Just saying. But the biggest problem of all, scoring. This could be tied to all my previous points in some way, but the end result is we've forgotten how to put the puck in the net. Here's the telling stat. In the last 4 games, we scored a grand total of 5 goals. All of those coming from the top line. Okay, fine, 4 of those coming from the top line, and the 5th coming from John Michael Lyles while his defensive pairing was playing with the top line. This was a problem earlier in the year, but since Kessel and Lupul were playing out of their minds back then, didn't matter as much. Now that they've cooled off, well, as for the second line that was such a beast last year and was supposed to continue their success this year, not so much. In the past 4 games, since the slump started, has been completely silent, while Nikolai Kulemin, who was a 30-goal scorer last year, has 1 goal on the season and is in a 10-game goal drought. 10 games! Not sure what to do to break that funk, but does it ever need to be broken? Anyway, that's all I got for you for now. The Leafs have a bit of an easier schedule this week, playing Phoenix and Nashville before their Saturday date against Washington. Hopefully they can string together a few more wins then. Go Leafs go! I'll see you next week.